Alright, so this lesson is on graphing linear inequalities. So let's just get right to it. To graph this linear inequality, we're going to always start with the y-intercept. So I'm going to start with that 5. That's your y-intercept. That is where it's going to cross your y-axis. So over here on my y-axis, I'm going to go up. I'm going to put a dot at 5. Okay, so that's where we're always going to start graphing these. Your y-intercept, I'm going to put a dot at 5. All right, this number right here in front of your x, that is your slope. And if you remember, slope is rise over run. So my slope is -2. So I have my rise, but I need my run. So the way we make it a fraction, if it's just a regular integer or whole number, we put a 1 underneath it. So this means I'm going to go down 2, because it's a negative, and over 1. So from my y-intercept, from this 5, I'm going to go down 2 and over 1. And we're always going to go over to the right. Okay, your top number tells us how many up or down. If it was a positive 2, we would have gone up 2. And your bottom number will tell you how many to go to the right. So down 2 over 1. And I like to put 3 dots just to make my line as nice as possible. So again, from this dot I just made, I'm going to go down 2 and over 1 more. Okay, now we just play connect the dots. Now, before you do that, there's some things we need to talk about. This inequality, if it has the line under it, that means it's going to be a solid line. If it does not have a line under it, that means it's going to be a dashed line. So this one has the line under it, the equal to sign under it. So when I connect these dots, I'm going to connect them with a solid line. And it's going to go through all the dots. I'm going to put arrows on the end to show, hey, it's going to keep on going. Okay? So that line is graphed. Now I need to shade. It says y is greater than. If it's greater than, that means we're going to shade above the line. If it was a less than, then we would have shaded below. Okay? Let's do another one. Here's another one. All right, so remember, we're always going to start with our y-intercept. So here's my y-intercept. It's at -2, so I'm going to come down here to -2. I'm going to do it in red. I'm going to put a dot at -2. So take a second, look at that, make sure we're good there. Why I put a dot at -2, that's my y-intercept. Here's my slope. So again, 2/3 is my slope. So that means I'm going to rise 2, and I'm going to run 3. That's what the slope means. So from this dot, from this -2, I'm going to go up 2 and over 3. And again, I like to do it twice. Up 2 and over 3. Okay, there are my dots. Now I need to make my line. So I'm looking at this inequality. There's no line underneath it. So if you remember, that means it would be dashed. So here's how you do a dashed line. Dashed line through those dots. And it says less than. Y is less than. So if it's less than, that means we're going to shade below. So there's that graph. All right, let's do another one. Okay, this time, y is not by itself, right? I got this 4 here. So I need to move this 4. So they're multiplying, and the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I'm going to divide everything by 4. So let me pull this calculator out. And let's do this division. So I would do, these 4's cancel. So I'm going to bring down my y, bring down my inequality. So I'm going to do 2 divided by 4. And I get 0.5. Now with slope, I always want fraction. So I'm going to change this to a fraction by hitting math, enter, enter. So I get 1/2. So I got 1/2 x. I'm going to bring down my plus, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. So take a second, make sure you understand I divided everything by 4. 2 divided by 4 gave me 1/2. 8 divided by 4 gave me 2. So to graph this, again, we start with our y-intercept. It's right here. So at 2, I'm going to put a circle, a dot. Got a dot at 2, because that's my y-intercept. 1/2 is my slope, and remember it's rise over run. So I'm going to go up 1 from this dot. I'm going to go up 1 and over 2. I'm going to put another dot. And I like to do it twice. Up 1, over 2, put a dot. So now I need to see, do I want a solid line or a dashed line? Because it has that line under it. That means it's going to be a solid line. Put arrows on the end to show it keeps going and going. And it says less than. Y is less than. And less than means we shade below. So that's your graph. All right, here's another one where we got to do a little bit more to get y by itself. So I need to move the x, the 6x, and I need to move the 2. And you always want to add or subtract first. So I'm going to move that 6x. So the opposite of a negative 6x is a positive 6x. Do it on both sides. So these go away. So I'm going to bring down 2y, bring down my inequality. Now here, you can't add these because that's a 12 and that's a 6x. So I'm just going to rewrite it. And I'm going to put my x first. Just because when I do slope and y-intercept, I always like to have my x come first. So I got a 6x and a positive 12. Now the 2 and the y are multiplying, and the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I'm going to divide everything by 2. So these 2's cancel. So bring down my y. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And 12 divided by 2 is 6. So let's graph this. I'm going to start with my y-intercept, which is at 6. So I'm going to go up and put a dot at 6. My slope is 3. And remember, to make it a fraction, we put a 1 under it. So I'm going to rise 3. I'm going to run 1. So now look at this graph. If I went up 3 and over 1, I'm going to be off the graph. So instead of going up 3 and to the right 1, we can flip both of them. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to go down 3, but to the left 1. Down 3 and to the left 1. And it would be the exact, oh, I didn't go down 3, I only went down 2. Here. And it would be the same thing. Look, if I went up 3 and over 1, I'd still be on the same line as these other dots. Okay, so that's just a little trick. If your graph looks like it's going to go off the graph, you can always do the opposite for both of them. So let's look at our inequality. There's no line under it, so that means it's going to be dashed. I'll put arrows because it'll keep going. And it's y is greater than, so that means I shade above. Okay, so let's do some horizontal and vertical. If you remember a while back, I taught you these words. That means if it's y equals a number, it's going to be horizontal, which means it's going to go like this. If it's x equals a number, it's going to be vertical, which means it's going to go like this. So this is x is less than 4. This is going to be vertical. So I'm going to go to 4 on my x-axis and put a dot. Okay, so now I'm ready to draw my vertical line. I need to figure out if it's going to be dashed or if it's going to be solid. There is no line under it, so that means it's going to be a dashed line. And it's vertical again. And it says x is less than 4. Well, less than means we're going to go to the left. If it was greater than, we would have gone to the right. So that's x is less than 4. I think the next one is a y. Yes, good. All right, so again, I would be thinking of hoy. If it's y equals a number, that means it's horizontal. So we're going to go across. So I'm going to go to -3 and put a dot. Let's figure out if it's going to be solid or dashed. Well, it has that line under it, so it's going to be solid line. It says y is greater than, so greater than means shade above. So that's it. If you'll go try the worksheet and the USA test prep and let me know if you need help.